My name is Emma, and I am 32 years old, and I live in the beautiful but very rainy city of Seattle, Washington. If you know anything about Seattle, you know that coffee is not just a drink here, but it is a way of life, and it is the blood that flows through the veins of every person living in this misty corner of the United States. My partner Mark and I have lived here for 5 years, and we absolutely love the culture of the Pacific Northwest, even though we are currently struggling to make ends meet. Being broke in an expensive city like Seattle is a challenge that requires a lot of creativity and a lot of sacrifices. We live in a small apartment where the windows rattle when the wind blows off the Puget Sound, and the heater makes a clicking sound that kept me awake for the first 6 months we lived here. Mark is a volunteer firefighter, which is something he is incredibly proud of, and he spends a lot of his time training and helping the community while I am currently in between jobs and searching for something that fits my skills in marketing and communications. Because money is so tight, we have to be very careful with every single dollar we spend at the grocery store. We do not go to the fancy boutiques or the organic markets where a single head of lettuce costs $5. Instead, we go to the big box stores and buy the massive plastic tubs of the cheapest coffee available. You know the kind I mean. It comes in a bright red or blue plastic container, and the grounds look more like sawdust than actual coffee beans. We try to make it better by adding things we find in the back of the pantry, like a dash of ground cinnamon or some leftover pumpkin pie spice from 3 years ago. It does the trick and gives us that caffeine kick we need to start the day, but it is definitely not a gourmet experience. My parents, however, are a different story entirely. They live about 20 minutes away in a much nicer neighborhood, and they are what you would call coffee snobs. They refuse to drink anything that does not come from a specific high-end local roaster that specializes in ethically sourced beans. The only blend they will touch is a Guatemalan roast that smells like chocolate and heaven, and they talk about the notes of stone fruit and caramel as if they are judging a wine competition. A few weeks ago, Mark and I were visiting them, and we started looking at the website of that fancy roaster just to see what all the fuss was about. We saw all these incredible descriptions of coffee from all over the world. Mark was really drawn to a Kenyan blend that supposedly tasted like black currants and honey, and I found myself staring at a rich dark roast named after the village we live in. Our village is named after a local revolutionary hero who fought for the rights of the people long ago, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever that there was a coffee named in his honor. We looked at the price, and our hearts sank because a small bag cost more than our entire meat budget for the week. We sighed and closed the laptop and went back to our cheap plastic tub coffee. Then something happened that changed everything for me. I started having these terrible pains in my stomach, and after a long and uncomfortable visit to the doctor, I was diagnosed with a stomach ulcer. The doctor was very stern with me and told me that if I wanted to heal, I had to completely change my diet for at least 3 months. That meant no spicy foods, no citrus, and most importantly, no coffee. I felt like my world was ending because coffee was the one little joy I had every morning. To cope with this, I went out and bought a bag of roasted chicory root, which is a common substitute for coffee. It does not have any caffeine, and it tastes a bit like toasted wood and dirt. But if I close my eyes and add enough almond milk, I can almost pretend I am part of the morning ritual again. Even though I could not drink the real stuff, I continue to wake up early every single morning to make a pot for Mark. He works such long and exhausting days at the fire station, and it felt like the least I could do while I was at home looking for work. I would stand there smelling the cheap coffee and feeling a deep sense of longing, but I stayed strong because I wanted my stomach to get better. Then earlier this week, Mark came home from the fire station looking like he had won the lottery. He was carrying a small gift bag, and he told me that the new mayor of our town had stopped by the station to thank all the volunteers for their hard work. Inside the bag were some locally made saltwater taffy, a nice ceramic mug, and a small silver bag of coffee. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the label because it was the exact dark roast from the high-end roaster that was named after our village. It was the one I had been dreaming about. I was so excited that I was practically dancing around our tiny kitchen. I held the bag to my nose, and even though it was sealed, I felt like I could smell the rich and smoky aroma. I carefully tucked it away in the back of our pantry behind the cans of beans because I wanted to keep it safe. In my mind, I had already decided how this was going to go. I thought that Mark would realize how much I wanted to try it, and he would wait until my 3 months of medication were over so we could brew it together and experience that first sip at the same time. Or if he really could not wait that long, I assumed he would at least come to me and say that he was dying to try it. And then I would allow myself just one tiny teaspoon of a sip so we could talk about the flavors together. I know I should have said this out loud, but we have been together for a long time, and I honestly thought he understood me better than that. I am the kind of person who believes that the best part of any new experience is sharing it with the person you love. Fast forward to Friday night, and we were doing our usual big grocery run at the discount warehouse. I pointed out that our giant tub of cheap coffee was almost empty, and we decided to try a different brand that was on sale for $2 off. We were joking about how we were big spenders now, and I felt good about our little life together. Saturday morning arrived, and Mark had to leave early for extra training at the fire hall. I was still in bed when I heard the coffee maker start to hiss and pop. He usually makes enough for both of us, or at least leaves the machine ready for my chicory, but that morning he was in a rush. He did not make me anything at all, and when I finally got out of bed and saw the empty carafe, I felt a little sting of sadness. We had a small bicker about it over text message while he was at his training, but I tried to let it go and get on with my chores. When he finally came home in the evening, I was sitting on the couch, and I asked him how the new brand of cheap coffee tasted. I was curious if the sale brand was better than our usual one. Mark looked at me with a blank expression and said that he did not know because he did not drink the cheap stuff that morning. He told me that he had opened the fancy silver bag of the Village Roast and made a cup of that instead. I felt like the air had been kicked out of my lungs. I asked him if he was serious and if he really drank it without me and without even telling me. I told him that I would have loved to have just a tiny sip so we could discover it together. He just shrugged his shoulders and said that he never even thought about it. He said he was in the kitchen and I was in the washroom and the bag was right there, so he just made a cup and he thought it was only average anyway. He did not think it was a big deal at all. That was when the blowout fight started. I was so angry and hurt that I started crying. I told him that he was being incredibly selfish and inconsiderate. I reminded him of how he always gives our cat new toys when I am not in the room, which means I never get to see the cat's first reaction, which is the best part of having a pet. I told him that it was not about the coffee itself, but about the shared experience. It was like if I watched the series finale of a show we had been watching together for 3 years without him, and then told him it was just okay the next day. He could still watch it, but the magic of doing it together would be gone forever. He tried to defend himself by saying he would leave some in the bag for me to try in 2 months, but he just did not get it. He did not understand that the first time only happens once. I told him that from now on he could make his own damn coffee every single morning, and I was not going to help him with his little rituals anymore if he could not be bothered to think of me. But as I sat there in the silence of our apartment after the fight, I realized that just stopping his coffee service was not enough. I wanted him to understand exactly how it felt to have a special moment stolen away. I am usually terrible at being petty, but this time I felt a fire in my soul. I needed a plan for revenge that would be poetic and meaningful. I spent the next few days acting normal, but I was secretly observing him and looking for his weakness. Mark is a man of simple pleasures, but there are a few things he treats with absolute reverence. One of those things is a very specific brand of limited edition hot sauce that is made by a small company in eastern Washington. Every year, they release a batch called the Dragon Breath, and it is legendary among chili heads and firefighters. Mark has a collection of their empty bottles on a shelf like trophies, and he had been talking for months about how the new batch was going to be released soon. He had been saving up $20 specifically for this bottle, because it is the only luxury he allows himself. I realized that this was my golden opportunity. The release was happening on a Tuesday morning at a small specialty shop in downtown Seattle, and I knew that Mark had a mandatory 24-hour shift at the fire station starting that morning. He had asked me to go and buy a bottle for him as soon as the shop opened, because they always sell out within 2 hours. He had given me his crumpled $20 bill and kissed me on the cheek and told me how much he was looking forward to having a big bowl of chili with that sauce when he got home on Wednesday morning. He was so excited that he was talking about it in his sleep. This was it. This was the moment I would teach him my lesson. On Tuesday morning, I woke up early and took the bus downtown. The rain was pouring down in buckets, and I had to stand in a line outside the shop for 45 minutes, but I did not mind. I felt a sense of purpose. When the doors finally opened, I was the third person inside. I bought the bottle of Dragon Breath, and the shopkeeper even gave me a little sticker that said I survived the heat. I took the bottle home and set it on the kitchen counter. Now the standard revenge would be to hide the bottle or to throw it away, but that is not my style. I wanted him to see it, and I wanted him to know what he missed. I called up my younger brother, who is also a huge fan of spicy food, and told him to come over for lunch. I told him I had a surprise for him. When my brother arrived, his eyes went wide when he saw the bottle on the counter. He asked if Mark was okay with us opening it, and I just smiled and said that Mark would be thrilled that we were enjoying it. I went to the store and bought some high-quality chicken wings, and I fried them up until they were perfectly crispy. Then I took that brand new never-before-opened bottle of Dragon Breath, and I cracked the seal. The sound of that plastic ring breaking was the most satisfying sound I have ever heard in my life. I tossed the wings in the sauce, and the smell of habanero and vinegar filled the entire apartment. My brother and I sat down at the table, and I watched him take that first bite. His face turned bright red, and he started sweating, but he had a huge grin on his face. He told me it was the best version of the sauce they had ever made, and that the flavor was complex and smoky with a hint of lime. I could not eat the wings because of my ulcer, but I took a tiny, tiny toothpick and dipped it into the sauce and touched it to my tongue. It burned like 1,000 suns, but it was delicious. We sat there for an hour talking about the sauce and how it compared to previous years, and we had a truly wonderful shared experience. We finished almost half the bottle. When my brother left, he thanked me profusely and said he could not wait to hear what Mark thought of it. I cleaned up the kitchen, but I made sure to leave the half-empty bottle of hot sauce right in the middle of the counter with the cap slightly off and the seal visibly broken. I also left the empty chicken wing bones in a bowl nearby, so the smell of the feast would still be hanging in the air. I went to bed feeling a strange mix of guilt and triumph. The next morning, Mark came home from his long shift looking exhausted and hungry. The first thing he did after taking off his boots was walk straight into the kitchen. I stayed in the bedroom and listened. I heard the sound of the refrigerator opening and then a long silence. Then I heard him say my name in a very quiet and confused voice. I walked into the kitchen and saw him standing there staring at the bottle of Dragon Breath. He looked like someone had told him his favorite childhood park had been turned into a parking lot. He asked me if I had bought the sauce, and I told him that I had and that it was amazing. I told him that my brother had come over and we had a great time trying it for the first time together. Mark looked at the half-empty bottle and then at me, and he asked why I did not wait for him. He said he had been looking forward to that first taste for months and that he wanted us to do it together. I looked him dead in the eyes and I used his own words against him. I told him that I never even thought about waiting for him. I said I was in the kitchen and the bottle was right there and I wanted wings, so I just opened it. I told him it was only average anyway and that I did not think it was a big deal. The look of realization that dawned on his face was worth more than 1,000 bags of fancy coffee. He stood there for a long time just looking at the bottle and then at me, and I could see the gears turning in his head. He finally understood what I had been trying to explain during our fight. He realized that by being impulsive and thoughtless, he had stolen a memory from me, and now I had done the same to him. The room was silent for what felt like an hour, but was probably only a minute. Mark finally spoke, and he did not sound angry, he sounded humbled. He told me that he was sorry and that he finally got it. He said he had been selfish and that he had not realized how much those small shared moments meant until he was the one who was left out. He admitted that the hot sauce was not going to taste as good now because the excitement of the discovery was gone. We had a very long and honest talk that morning. It was one of those deep conversations that couples need to have every once in a while to reset their relationship. We talked about how being broke makes us cling to small things and how we need to be more careful with each other's feelings. He promised that from now on, he would always check with me before opening anything special or starting a new tradition. And I promised that I would try to be more vocal about my expectations instead of assuming he could read my mind. To make it up to me, Mark actually went out and did something incredible. He found a part-time job doing some basic carpentry work on his days off from the fire station, and he saved up enough money to buy another bag of that Village dark roast coffee. But he did not just buy the coffee. He bought a beautiful airtight container to keep it in, and he placed a sticky note on it that said, "Do not open until Emma can drink coffee again." He told me that we are going to wait the full 3 months, and that on the very first day I am allowed to have caffeine, we are going to wake up early together and brew the entire pot. He said he wants us to sit on the porch even if it is raining and drink it slowly while we watch the sun come up. I was so touched by the gesture that I almost cried again, but this time they were happy tears. As for the hot sauce, I told him that my brother and I had saved the second half of the bottle just for him, and that even though the seal was broken, we could still have a special dinner where he could tell me all about the different flavors he noticed. Our new normal is a lot better now. We are more in tune with each other, and we have a new rule that any first-time experiences are sacred. It might seem petty to some people, but in a world where we do not have much, those little moments are everything. The unexpected twist came a week later when my parents stopped by. They had heard about my ulcer, and they felt bad that I could not enjoy my usual treats. They brought over a huge gift basket filled with the most expensive non-acidic herbal teas and gourmet snacks that were safe for me to eat. But at the bottom of the basket was a small envelope. Inside was a gift card to that fancy local roaster for $50. My parents told me that they wanted us to have a coffee date on them once I was all healed up. Mark and I looked at each other, and we both started laughing. We realized that we had fought so hard over one little bag of coffee when there was so much more ahead of us. We are currently counting down the days until my medication is finished. I have about 6 weeks left, and every time I see that silver bag in the pantry, I feel a sense of excitement. It is not just about the taste of the coffee anymore. It is about the fact that we are choosing to wait for each other. We are choosing to value the shared experience over the instant gratification. And honestly, I think that is the best revenge of all, because it turned a moment of bitterness into a foundation for a much stronger relationship. Mark still makes his own coffee every morning, and he has become quite the expert at making that cheap stuff taste decent with a little bit of vanilla extract he found on sale. I drink my chicory, and I dream of the day when we can finally share that perfect cup of the village roast. We have learned that money might be tight, but our respect for each other does not have to be. We are still the same broke couple in a rainy city, but we are a little bit wiser and a lot more connected than we were before. And if he ever tries to give the cat a toy without me again, I have already decided that I am going to buy the most expensive box of chocolates in the world and eat them all while he is at work and leave the empty wrappers on his pillow. But I think he has learned his lesson. For now, we are just enjoying the quiet mornings and the anticipation of what is to come. Every time I smell the rain, I think about that future cup of coffee, and I know it is going to be the best thing I have ever tasted because I will be tasting it with him. This journey started with a simple bag of coffee and a lot of hurt feelings, but it ended with a deeper understanding of what it means to be a partner. Sometimes you have to be a little petty to make a big point, and I am not ashamed of what I did. It saved our morning rituals, and it saved our sense of togetherness. In the end, we both won, and that is the best kind of revenge there is. I am Emma, and this was the story of how a bag of coffee almost broke us, but a bottle of hot sauce brought us back together. We are looking forward to the future, and all the first times we will get to share together in our little apartment in Seattle, Washington. The rain is still falling outside as I speak, but the sun is definitely shining inside our home, and that is all that matters to me. We are happy, and we are a team, and we are ready for whatever comes next as long as we do it together. The moral of the story is to never underestimate the power of a shared experience, especially when you do not have much else to share. Treat those moments with the respect they deserve, and your life will be much richer for it regardless of how much money is in your bank account. I hope my story helps someone else out there who feels ignored or undervalued in their relationship. Sometimes a little creative revenge is exactly what you need to get things back on track and to remind your partner why you fell in love in the first place. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember to always wait for your partner before you open the good stuff. It is always worth the wait.